What's happening, guys? This is Adi from Tritos International, and we are here to chat about the second transfer of the season. We're talking about Lorenzo Scipioni from Tigre, and he's another Argentinian rising star, Bulldog. Can't wait to get into this. He's a really exciting player, and as we're looking to reinforce our midfield for this season, we're going to look at all of the traits that he has and how he can assist the team moving forward. So, the transfer fee, as you guys know, it was reported initially to be 4.5 million for 85% of his rights. There were different reports, though, coming from Argentinian outlets. Argentinian outlets were saying the same fee, but for 80% of his rights. The deal took a little bit longer. We had been hearing it was done. It was done for about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks. And the player's rights was really the sticking point, but that seems to be done. The player is in Greece at the time of recording, and he is ready to be an Olympiacos player. So let's chat about this guy right here, Lorenzo Scipioni. Let's talk about the player, his profile, what it is that he does, and the profile of the player in terms of his ball carrying ability. Very interesting. Amazingly aggressive on the ball. And like a former product of ours, Bobby Scosulas, absolutely fearless. This guy does not care who's coming after him. He is going to go into every challenge. He's going to go into every physical duel 100%. Has a very nice touch, very quick feet. Does not have a very low center of gravity, but he's agile and he can change directions relatively easily. And he has the ball skill to help him really emphasize some of those feints as he's trying to get in and out of different situations. Very comfortable on the ball, moves it around quickly as well on the distribution end. But at the same time, he's not afraid to attack spaces himself, which is very interesting because you don't see quite as many defensive midfielders that are that comfortable attacking those spaces, at least for us, not since a certain Guillerme. So very, very interesting. And we're going to touch on a lot of these traits and a lot of these things that we're seeing as we go on through the scouting report. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is goal creation. And as I always do for all the scouting reports, for those of you, if this is the first one that you're seeing, we start off with a little chart that you see here. So this is various stat categories on a per 90-minute basis, and we rank him in a percentile based on how he performs in each category compared to other players, in this case other center mids and other defensive mids. We always start off with goal creation just because it's what I like to start with. And regarding Scipioni's goal creation and shot creation, of course, he's only scored 3 goals in his young career so far. One of them was a penalty. The other 2 were off of set pieces. And those 2 goals, he didn't score directly off of the set pieces. They were both off of either a rebound or a loose ball. Outside of the goals that he scored, his primary shot creation comes from shots from distance, both in open play and off of set pieces. A lot of them 21 to 25 meters, so pretty far. While we like that he isn't afraid to do this and he's not afraid to take these shots, unfortunately his shot power is not really all that there. This is a lot of the shots that you see, they kind of be on the ground, they limp toward goal. It reminds me of Pudence's first season with Olympiacos when his shot power is basically the same as hitting a ball with a wet noodle. But if he can get more power on these shots, his placement's not bad. If he can get some power on these shots, he can be a pretty big threat from distance. Assist creation, also relatively non-existent. His only professional assist so far in his career came from a 2-meter pass to his teammate that was directly ahead of him in the penalty area. He did have some nice passes from the midfield to kind of cut the lines and put a couple of his teammates into different scoring positions. But the frequency of those opportunities was pretty far and in between. So I don't think you should be expecting to see that, at least on a game-by-game basis. Not anytime soon, anyway. Now, he does get a lot of balls into the final third. His niche is really in build-up, which is something we're going to talk about in about a minute. But getting the balls to his teammates for a shot, that final product is not really where his strengths lie. So, all in all, it wouldn't surprise me this season if we see maybe a handful of goal contributions from Scipione. Actually, that would be fantastic if we saw that. But we're not signing this player because he gets you a ton of balls into the box. We're not signing this player because he's going to be a goal contribution machine. Far from it. We're signing this player because of what he can do deeper in the pitch in the central midfield areas. So now let's talk about that deeper central area. Let's talk about the passing and the buildup. The passing and the buildup part of this is in the white segment up top. The goal creation stats are, of course, were in the red. And in buildup, Scipione is very impressive. Not shy, as I've already kind of talked about before. He's not shy when asking for the ball. He's functional in so many different situations. He can dribble himself out of trouble. He can advance the ball passing it, by carrying it as well, almost pretty equal in terms of the volume. He passes and moves very accurately, and for a younger player, he has some great instincts as to when to move the ball and hold on to it. For a 20-year-old, you expect to see a lot more mistakes, and I didn't see quite as many mistakes of not knowing where his teammates were or hesitating, getting a little anxious with the ball. You didn't see a lot of that at all. His lack of fear in physical duels also makes him a monster to try and press against. He's one of Tigre's best assets at progressing the ball forward, usually by pass. But even in the entire Argentinian league, he has some of the highest volume getting the ball forward into the final third. And you can see that reflected in the progressive passes areas and some of the other stats in the white section of the bar chart here. I imagine that when he's playing for Olympiacos and he's seeing more of the ball, that maybe we could get more from him in this respect. It's also possible we could get less because we're in a little bit more of an advanced position. So what makes what he's done even more impressive for Tigre is that Tigre is a side that doesn't usually dominate possession. Olympiacos does. So we might see as he's playing for Olympiacos and we're sitting in the final third more often, maybe he does more in the penalty area and less going into the final third. But for now, when he's playing with a team that doesn't get so much possession and isn't spending as much time in the final third, the fact that he's so involved with so many things as it gets into the final third is a very good sign. Now, something to bear in mind here is that Scipione plays for a Tigre side that runs primarily a 4-4-2. They do at times run a 4-2-3-1, but usually it's a wider set 4-4-2 in a more mid block. The reason I bring this up is that the shape he is used to lends itself to more space versus Mendilibar, we know can be a little bit more compact and condensed because a lot of our opportunities come after we've turned the ball over from the press. So the structure with how we play, focus on the counter and the counter press and creating opportunities off that press is a little bit different than what he's used to. So I expect that his early appearances, we're going to see some struggles in transition, especially because I don't believe he's going to have as many options wide when he turns the ball over or has the ball central. So he's going to have to get used to that. In Tigre, he was used to looking wide, and he would see at least one of his two wingers stretching the field plus his forward. Additionally, I expect that given how often Olympiacos is in the final third in Greece, we are going to see comparatively less of the progressive action that we see from him now in Tigre. So all of this is what I'm expecting from the player. So when people say, "Oh, he did so much more of this at Tigre, his transition in Greece, he can't transition in Greece," that's not necessarily the case. He will see less of that because Olympiacos just spends more time in the final third. And that's why you'll probably see that drop. So just something for you guys to bear in mind. Now, his pass accuracy sits just above average in the league. It is weighed down by a large number of attempted long passes into the final third. He's not afraid to take those risks downfield, but perhaps he has a propensity to take maybe just a bit too many risks. In a way, his capabilities and instincts when receiving the ball could feed directly into Mendilibar. We all know that Mendilibar wants to get the ball forward as fast as possible, when Olympiacos has the ball, and he has no problem doing it. So the silver lining across all competitions, Scipione has over 80% pass accuracy and about 56% pass accuracy on long passes. So the big question mark will be how he adjusts to a side that is going to be facing more parked buses versus what he's used to in Argentina. So this is a similar question that we had for his countryman Santiago Eze when Santi Eze came in, because Santi was playing for a side that did have more possession, and he was doing a little bit more moving the ball in from closer distances, but he was used to having to do that. And we wondered, hey, how is the transition going to be back when our coach was Diego Martinez? So similar concerns, but for very different reasons here. Big thing though, as I mentioned before, Scipione's tendencies match what Mendilibar wants, and that is a very good sign. Hopefully, that means his transition will be quicker, and then his instincts that he's already developed at Tigre will be a closer match to what we already want in the system of Jose Luis Mendilibar. Now, let's talk about defensive attributes. The reason we are looking at this player is for what he does on the defensive side of the ball. In the yellow section here of the chart, these are the defensive attributes, and they are all well above the competition, well above the median. I mean, in a handful of these, like defensive duels, I mean, he is just in the top percentile for all of it. As we all know, and as I've said in previous scouting reports, our most important tactical approach is the press. The press is everything for us. We press to create our best opportunities off of turnovers, and we press to prevent the opponent from establishing any kind of rhythm. In this respect, we seem to be getting a bulldog in Scipioni that will fit right into this system. Scipioni is an aggressive animal. In a way, his level of intensity and his passion on the field, like I said in the introduction of the scouting report, is that he reminds me of Babis Kostulas. Scipione is not afraid of whoever is challenging him. It doesn't matter how big they are or who they are. He throws his whole body into every challenge. His relentlessness is reflected in that he is one of the best midfielders and most successful in those defensive duels, like I already mentioned. He also gets in the way of so many shots. Just look at where his blocked shots per 90 is compared to the rest of the league. It's insane. He puts his body on the line for the team in every respect. And I watched him fling himself in front of players to keep shots going towards his goal. I mean, I am already imagining the Karaiskaki going wild as he just leaves everything on the pitch like he was doing for Tigre. Even as a massively aggressive player, he's also pretty smart as well. He's capable of reading the opponent's plays well above average in terms of his interception ability. He's quick, so even if his positioning is not perfect, he can recover pretty well as well. He's so impactful for Tigre in the counter press and stifling opponents' transitions. I mean, he covers his front line well, his wide defenders too. He does seem to fancy himself a yellow card here and there, but that shouldn't surprise any of you given the level of aggression I'm talking about. And quite frankly, guys, I don't think the Karaiskaki is going to care about how many yellows he gets unless he starts getting stupid reckless like a certain Hussein Uba, for those of you that remember back in the day. Now, in the air, Scipione is also excellent. Pretty decent vertical, but he's also pretty crazy physical in these duels as well. The positioning is decent, especially on the defensive end, follows the ball, does well to get in the way of attackers. But like the big thing is, he just doesn't care. He gets into your face. He gets into the faces of whoever it is he's marking. He's going to be an extremely valuable asset for this team. And he's going to be a bulwark presence in the box, which is something I know our goalkeeper Tsolakis, Paskalakis, whoever it is that he's playing in front of, is going to really value and really love about him. Now, let's talk about comparisons here. For this comparison, there's really none better for me than to compare him to his fellow Argentinian, Santiago Eze. Now, Eze, for those of you that remember, joined us from Argentina, And he's had a lot of success at this club, playing as not really as a six, but playing in that role that Mendilibar wants from him. And there was concern about whether or not he could transition for us. This was back when Diego Martinez was our coach. Eze operated at Huracan in a similar role to Scipioni, albeit in different systems, as I've already mentioned. Huracan possessed the ball a little bit more. Tigre is a little bit more mid-block, a little bit more defensive. And what we see here is remarkable. Jeze's data, along with Scipioni, is so similar. And for those of you, just to be very clear here, what we're comparing is Scipioni's data at Tigre to Santiago Jeze's data when he was at Huracan, when we just picked him up. So I'm comparing the two and how they looked before they joined Olympiacos. Now, looking at the chart here, we see a lot of similarities, but a couple of differences. So where Scipioni and Jeze differ, data comes down to interceptions versus defensive duels. Scipioni is a more aggressive player than Santiago Jeze is, but Jeze's ability to read the offensive transition of the opponent is at a higher level. One complaint many Olympiacos fans have for Santiago is that he doesn't seem to be play aggressive. He's not a real six. Now, while Scipioni lacks some of the more completeness that Jeze has in terms of his total game, possessing the ball, moving the ball, all in all, Scipioni is much more of a six than Santiago Jeze ever will be. Both players are remarkably similar in how often they can progress the ball forward, where they're comfortable distributing the ball and sitting, both passing it as well as carrying it. So there's a lot of similarities there, even though Scipioni, I think, carries the ball forward more dynamically and better than Santiago Jeze does. But it's funny because I don't think I'm being drastic here by saying that we have found ourselves a Jeze 2.0. And I don't mean that just in the way that, oh, he's just another Santiago Jeze. No. I actually see a player here whose potential goes beyond Santiago Jeze. I see a player that is more aggressive, that is a little bit more dynamic, dribbling the ball. I see a player that could be just as good as Santiago Jeze is in reading the opponents and intercepting the balls. I really see a player that resembles the most closely to Guilherme, our beloved six under the Pedro Martins era, that was about as complete of a six as we've seen at this club. Now, there's a caveat to Scipioni when we're comparing and talking about Jeze. Santiago Jeze played multiple seasons as a starter in Huracan and even became their captain at such a young age. Scipioni has only played professional football this season for Tigre. So while his potential is higher, the risk associated with him is also higher. Jeze had a much larger sample size for us to work with, for us to look at and see, is this sustainable? Can he do this in Greece? And we saw that. Sustainable production. So we had a pretty good idea that he could replicate that in Greece. But with Scipioni, the sample size is smaller. And therein lies the problem. Will his transition be as smooth as Jeze's was? We'll have to wait and find out. But there's more risk, and we paid virtually the same price we did for Santiago. Now, it's about this time in the scouting report where I give you guys my verdict. How do I feel about this player? How do I feel about his fit? Do I think this is a good signing? And I'm just going to start by saying, and maybe you kind of got a little bit of a glimpse of that from early in the scouting report, but I am incredibly happy. If we're talking about upgrading the squad, going from Stamenic to this feels like a slam dunk. Now, hopefully, Scipioni doesn't pull a Stamenic and, comes in and starts playing like a scared child. Absolutely ruin this whole thing. But before you start to panic, I don't think this is the case at all. Kid has an attitude like Costulas, and if nothing else, he will throw everything into each match. He's an incredible scouted find from our scouting department. And as I mentioned earlier in the build-up section, I do expect a bit of a transition period for Scipioni. In Tigre, in possession, he sees so much more space and so much more width when his team has the ball. So I do think it'll take time for him to get used to a more condensed shape, Mendilibar, especially as he's learning to maneuver around his teammates. Additionally, I expect in Greece to see him a little bit less in terms of the progressive actions. I think we'll see him kind of be toned down on that because of how much time we spend in the final third. There's one variable that I had not exactly sure, but I can guess how it will impact him, and that is Mendilibar. Mendilibar does not let our center mids get too far forward. This means that any of our final third capability, as far as Scipioni is involved, will be capped because of how Mendy prefers them to be used. Mendy will not always allow him to get forward, so maybe he'll take less shots from distance. Maybe he'll progress the ball forward less. He won't have as many touches in the penalty box. These are the things that I'm talking about. Now, all in all, those considerations, the risks that are involved, I'm still giving this transfer a 2 thumbs up. This is a player that not only feels and seems like a great fit, but he comes with great resale value as well. Even if we're thinking beyond just Jose Luis Mendilibar, this player can fit virtually any system he plays in, not just based on his IQ, but his sheer work rate. Any coach would love to have a player like this that's just going to leave it all on the field. Who wouldn't? I don't get too many of these transfers where I see that I'm just so clear that this is going to be a hit. And this is one of them. You see the tape and you know you just have something special on your hands. Can't say that for everyone, but there are a handful of players I have seen. Guys like Wang and Baum, guys like Lorenzo Pirolo, who I thought would be a great fit. I didn't foresee he'd be as amazing as he was this season. But there's a handful of players where you see and you're just like, man, this guy's got it. He's got something. And I feel that. I see it in the tape with Scipioni. Might take a couple of months for us to really see him. We don't really know how many opportunities Mendilibar will give him this early. But this kid's got the goods. Maybe we won't see him as much. Maybe he'll get about 2,000 minutes or less this season, which isn't half bad. Maybe he'll see 3,000 minutes. But long term, even if it's not this season, next season, this guy will offer us something. Super excited for him, and you guys should be as well. I hope you guys enjoyed the deep dive for Lorenzo Scipioni. It's the first deep dive of the summer, and we know the club's work is just beginning. If you believe what's being said and reported, Olympiacos is looking to get probably 3 more signings before mid-July. At the time of recording, preseason training in the Netherlands is only a few days away. So the club has to get players in so that Mendilibar can begin to train and begin to get the team to gel. The good thing is we have a very nice core. Scipioni has fellow countrymen that are already in the team that can help him assimilate easier. So hopefully that will be the case. Maybe he can learn a little bit from Santiago Eze as well. Really excited for this. As always, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me on socials. Love to chat with you guys. Love to tell you everything that I've seen and just answer any questions in general. I'm Adi. This is the Dos International by the fans for the fans, and we'll see